I carried the cake out the front door myself, both hands under the cardboard base, still warm from the oven, the lemon frosting catching the porch light as I stepped outside into the October air. My son called after me from the hallway. My daughter-in-law didn't say a word, and I walked the 2 blocks home in my good shoes, alone, on my 72nd birthday. I should tell you how it started. Or maybe I should tell you that it started long before I was willing to see it. My name is Lorraine. I spent 31 years as a school librarian in Kitchener, Ontario. I raised 2 children in a 3-bedroom house on Dunbar Street, my son and my daughter who lives in Halifax now with her family. My husband Gerald passed 11 years ago, a heart attack in the driveway on a Tuesday morning in February. One of the neighbors found him. I was at the grocery store buying bread. After Gerald died, I did what most women my age do. I kept going. I tended the garden. I attended the library fundraisers even after I retired. I called my daughter every Sunday. I visited my son and his wife on holidays. I tried not to need too much. My son. I'll call him my son because that's what he is to me, whatever else he's become in recent years. Married his wife, Brenda, 14 years ago. I want to be fair when I talk about Brenda. I want to be honest with myself that she is not entirely a villain in this story, and I am not entirely without fault. But some things are simply what they are, and I've reached an age where I no longer see the point in dressing them up. From the beginning, Brenda ran the household the way certain people run offices, efficiently with a clear sense of who ranked where. She was warm to me in the early years, or at least what passed for warm. She remembered I took my tea with 1 sugar. She asked about my garden, but there was always something underneath those small courtesies, a kind of accounting, a sense that kindness was a limited resource being carefully budgeted. The first time I noticed something was off, my grandson was about 3 years old. I had come over for a Sunday dinner, brought a buttered chicken because my son had always loved it, and Brenda set it on the counter and said the kids were having something else that night, and maybe I could have brought something simpler. Not unkindly, just matter-of-factly, the way you'd tell someone the parking meter was expired. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself that a lot over the years. My grandson, Owen, grew up sweet. He had Gerald's eyes, pale grey, watchful, the kind that seemed to understand more than they let on. He used to save me the corner piece of birthday cake because he knew I liked the extra frosting. When he was in grade 4, he made me a card for Mother's Day because, he said, grandmothers counted too. I kept it in the drawer of my bedside table for years. My granddaughter, Lily, was born 5 years after Owen. She was more like Brenda, quick, certain, a little impatient with anything that slowed her down. I don't say that as a criticism. She just was who she was, and I loved her the way you love all of them, completely and without condition. For a long time, the 4 of them lived over on Strasbourg Road, about a 20-minute drive from my place. I came for dinners. I babysat when they needed me. I watched the kids on professional development days and drove them to swimming lessons and helped with school projects about Canadian provinces. I was useful. That was how I justified my presence, by being useful. I should have asked myself earlier why I felt I needed to justify it at all. 3 years ago, my son called me and said they'd found a bigger house in Waterloo, a newer build, 4 bedrooms, good school district. He said there was a finished basement apartment, self-contained, separate entrance off the side. He asked if I might be interested in renting it. I want to tell you I thought it through carefully. I didn't. I said yes within the week. I sold my house on Dunbar Street in the spring. 37 years of my life in that house. The wallpaper I'd chosen in the front hallway. The cedar hedge Gerald planted the year we moved in. The kitchen where I'd made 1,000 lunches. I sold it and I moved into the basement apartment on Fenwick Court. And I told myself it was practical. I told myself it was family. The apartment was nice enough. New appliances, good light from the egress windows, its own entrance, so I could come and go without disturbing anyone. Brenda had even picked out a grey-green paint for the walls that I genuinely liked. For the first few months, things felt hopeful. Then, slowly, they didn't. It's hard to describe what it's like to live underneath your own son's family. Every morning I could hear the kitchen above me, chairs scraping, the thud of small feet, the particular rhythm of a household that isn't yours. I was invited upstairs for dinner maybe twice a month. Not every week, not as a matter of course. Twice a month, scheduled, like an appointment. I stopped mentioning that I was lonely. I'd mentioned it once, in a gentle way, said something about how quiet the evenings were. Brenda said, with great reasonableness, that they were very busy with the kids' activities, and that I should join some clubs, maybe the seniors' centre on Weber Street. She wasn't wrong, exactly, but there was something in the way she said it, like I was a problem to be redirected, not a person to be included. My son, for his part, seemed to exist in a state of careful non-involvement. He loved me, I believe that, but he had long since learned that the easiest path was to let Brenda manage things, including me. When I tried to talk to him one-on-one, he listened with that look men get when they're waiting for the conversation to be over. My birthday is October 14th. I have always loved autumn birthdays. The light goes amber and the air smells like wood smoke and fallen leaves, and there's something about that particular quality of October afternoon that has always felt like mine. Gerald used to say I was built for October. He'd make a reservation somewhere nice, just the two of us, and then we'd come home to whatever the kids had done to the kitchen trying to bake a cake. The year I'm telling you about, my son and Brenda had planned a dinner party. Not for my birthday, for their friends. Or, to be more precise, they had planned a dinner party on my birthday and had mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that I was welcome to join. Brenda had texted me on the Wednesday to say they were having some friends over on Saturday, my birthday, and if I wanted to come up and have dinner with everyone, I was welcome to. She added a small smiley face at the end of the message, as if punctuation could soften it. I baked my own cake. Lemon with cream cheese frosting, the one my mother used to make, the recipe written in her handwriting on an index card I've had since 1987. I baked it Thursday evening and put it in the fridge. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was being oversensitive. Saturday came cold and bright. I got dressed in the blue cardigan my daughter had sent from Halifax. She always remembered my birthday, always sent something, and I went upstairs at 6 o'clock when Brenda had said dinner would start. There were 8 adults I didn't know, plus my son and Brenda, plus the children. The house was loud with the particular energy of people who know each other well and are happy to be together. Someone had brought wine. There was a charcuterie board on the kitchen island that I had not helped assemble. I stood in the doorway for a moment. My son came over and hugged me and said, "Happy birthday, Mom," and then someone called him from across the room and he went. Brenda was in the kitchen, moving efficiently, and she said, "Oh good, you're here. The kids are eating in the playroom. Can you go sit with them while we get everything sorted?" I said, "I'm sorry." She said, "We just have a lot of guests, and it would really help if the kids had someone with them. You don't mind, do you?" She was already turning back to the counter. I want to be clear about what she was asking. She was asking me, on my birthday, to eat my birthday dinner in the playroom with a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old, while 12 adults ate in the dining room. She wasn't asking out of cruelty, I don't think. She was asking the way people ask when they have stopped seeing you as a full person and started seeing you as a resource. Useful, portable, interchangeable with any other problem solver. I stood there for a moment. I could feel the blood in my face. Owen was in the doorway to the playroom. He had heard. He looked at me with those grey eyes, his grandfather's eyes, and he said quietly, "It's okay, Grandma. We can watch something." And that undid me more than anything Brenda had said, because Owen should not have to comfort me at a dinner party in my own son's house on my birthday. That boy should not have to be the one to smooth things over, to make space for his grandmother's dignity because no one else was going to. I said, "That's all right, sweetheart." And then I went downstairs. I got my cake out of the refrigerator. I put on my coat. I picked up the cardboard base with both hands, and I walked up the side stairs and out the exterior entrance, and I went home. I should explain that I had kept the house. Not Dunbar Street, that was sold, but my mother's house on Union Boulevard in Waterloo. She had left it to me when she passed, 7 years ago, and I had been renting it out ever since. The tenants had given notice that spring, and the house had been empty for 2 months, and I had been going back and forth about what to do with it. That Saturday evening, standing in my mother's kitchen with my birthday cake on the counter, I understood what to do with it. I called my daughter in Halifax. She answered on the second ring, and I told her what had happened, and she listened without interrupting, which is a gift not everyone knows how to give. When I finished, she said, "Mum, you've been letting this go on for too long." I knew she was right. I spent the next 3 weeks in my mother's house. I told my son I needed some space. He called twice, left messages that were more confused than apologetic. "What happened? Is something wrong? Brenda said you just left. We're worried about you." I let the calls go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk. I needed to think. What I thought about, mostly, was the last 3 years. I thought about every dinner I had eaten alone downstairs while the family ate together above me. I thought about the Christmas morning Brenda had suggested I come up at 10 instead of 8 so they could have their family time first. I thought about the afternoon Lily had a friend over, and Brenda asked me not to use the upstairs entrance for a few hours because the friend wasn't used to having extra people around. I thought about the time I overheard Brenda on the phone, talking to her own mother, saying that having my mother-in-law in the basement was convenient, but sometimes it felt like having a houseguest who never left. A houseguest. I had given up my home to live in their basement, watch their children, driven them to school, been useful and quiet and careful and small, and I was a houseguest who never left. I called a contractor friend of mine from the Kitchener Community Association. He walked through my mother's house with me on a Thursday and said it needed some updating, new flooring in the kitchen, 1 bathroom refreshed, but it was structurally sound and had good bones. We got to work in November. I had a lawyer too. Her name was Paula, and she worked out of an office on King Street, and she was the kind of woman who gets straight to the point without making you feel rushed. I had made a will when Gerald died, left everything equally to my son and daughter. I sat across from Paula on a grey November morning, and I told her I wanted to revisit it. I had a small RRSP I'd been drawing down, my teacher's pension through RTPP, my CPP and OAS, and the equity from Dunbar Street which I had invested with a financial advisor after the sale. I also had my mother's house, which was now in my name, free and clear. That house, Paula and I agreed, would go to Owen, not to my son, not to Brenda. To Owen. He was 12. He couldn't use it yet, but it would be his, held in trust until he was 25, managed by my daughter as trustee. The lawyer drafted it carefully. She explained that I had every right to leave assets however I chose, and that in Ontario a parent is not legally obligated to leave anything to an adult child. I knew that, but hearing it said plainly, in a quiet office with the sound of King Street traffic outside, Made it feel solid. Real. I also updated the beneficiary on my investment account. My daughter already lived well with her husband in Halifax. I left her the RRSP. The house went to Owen. My son didn't know any of this. I didn't tell him. There was nothing to tell yet. I moved back into my mother's house in January when the renovations were finished. New white oak floors in the kitchen, a freshened-up main bathroom, and the back bedroom repainted a pale blue that reminded me of the sky over Georgian Bay where Gerald and I used to go in August. I put my own furniture in, and it felt, for the first time in 3 years, like a place that was mine. I texted my son to let him know I was moving out of the basement. He called within 10 minutes, more animated than I'd heard him in a long time. He asked why, asked if something was wrong, said that Brenda had always made sure I was comfortable, that I had everything I needed down there. I said, I know you believe that. He went quiet. I said, I love you and I will always love you. But I needed more than what I had there, and I should have said so a long time ago instead of making myself smaller. He didn't know what to say to that. He said he was sorry if I felt that way. I noticed the word if. We have kept a polite distance since then. He calls on holidays. I answer. He came for tea once in March and sat at my kitchen table and looked around the house like he was seeing something he couldn't quite name. I made him a sandwich and we talked about Owen's hockey tournament and Lily's science project, and did not talk about Brenda or birthday dinners or the word if. Owen comes on his own sometimes now. He's 13, old enough to take the bus across town, and he shows up on Saturday afternoons, and we watch old nature documentaries, and I make him whatever he wants for lunch. Last month he asked me if I was happy in my new house. I told him yes, genuinely. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to watching polar bears on the television. He has no idea about the will. That's not something a 13-year-old needs to carry. But someday, when the time is right, he'll understand that I saw him, that in a room full of people who stopped seeing me, he was the one who looked. My daughter flew up from Halifax in February, just for a weekend. We walked along the trail by the river on the Saturday morning, both of us in heavy coats, the kind of cold that turns your breath to clouds. She asked how I really was. I told her about the house, about the renovation, about Paula and the will. She listened, and then she said, "Mum, I think you finally took your cake back." I laughed. I hadn't told her that part in so many words, but she understood. That cake, by the way. I brought it to the woman next door that same October night. Her name is Greta, a retired nurse from Brantford, and she lives alone, and we had spoken over the fence a few times. I knocked on her door at 8 o'clock with a lemon cake and said, "I have a birthday cake and nobody to share it with," and she opened the door wider and said, "Well, come in then." We sat at her kitchen table until nearly 11. She told me about her own children, the years she'd spent trying to be convenient, the slow work of learning to take up space again. We finished the whole cake between us. Some nights I still hear October in my mind, the cold air, the porch light, the weight of that cardboard base in my hands. And I think about what it means to finally decide that you are worth more than the space you've been given. Not loudly, not bitterly, just with both hands, one step at a time, walking home. I think about Greta's kitchen table sometimes, the way she just opened the door wider and said, "Come in then," no hesitation, no calculation, just a woman who understood what it meant to need somewhere to put down what you were carrying. That night taught me something I wish I'd understood 30 years earlier. The way people treat you is rarely about you. Brenda didn't ask me to sit in the playroom because she thought carefully about it and decided I was worth less. She asked because she had long since stopped thinking about it at all. That's its own kind of harm, not cruelty but erasure, and I had let it happen by making myself easy to erase. I had confused being needed with being loved. Every school run, every afternoon babysitting, every quiet dinner alone in the basement while life happened one floor above me, I told myself this was family. This was closeness, but closeness isn't proximity. You can live underneath someone's roof and be completely invisible to them. I know that now in a way I can't unknow. What I did right, eventually, was pay attention. Not to what people said, but to what they kept doing. Brenda said she wanted me nearby. What she kept doing was keeping me out of the way. My son said he loved me. What he kept doing was letting someone else decide what that love looked like in practice. Owen said nothing really, but what he kept doing, saving me the corner piece, showing up on Saturdays, asking if I was happy, that told me everything I needed to know about where the real current of this family ran. There's a kind of wisdom that only comes from living long enough to stop lying to yourself. I had the information for years. I just wasn't ready to use it. I kept finding reasons why this time was different, why I was being too sensitive, why the right thing was to ask for less rather than expect more. That wasn't humility. That was fear dressed up as patience. The will wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that. Leaving my mother's house to Owen wasn't about punishing his parents. It was about recognizing what's real. Owen saw me. He made room for me in the way young people do when they haven't yet learned to be strategic about their kindness. Freely, without keeping score, that deserves to be honored. And starting over at 72 in my mother's house with new white oak floors and a pale blue bedroom, that wasn't tragedy. That was the result of finally deciding that my own life was worth tending to, not after everyone else, not in the basement. Now, I carried the cake 2 blocks in the October cold, and I ate it with a stranger who became a friend. I've thought about that walk many times since, how light I felt, how strange it was that leaving was the thing that finally made me feel like I'd arrived somewhere. You get one life to figure out what you're worth. I'm glad I figured it out while I still had time to enjoy it.